We're live.
Okay, welcome to Senate West Availability. Interesting day on the floor today. We had a lot of time certains and ran a few bills along with that, but we're getting close to halfway through the session. I guess we're technically about halfway through the session and moving along now with a lot of bills going through committee. A lot of them hitting the board now, so there's going to be a lot of work done in the next few weeks, along with finishing up the budget. So we'll open it up to questions.
Maybe while they're thinking, it was actually kind of nice to take a break to recognize former Lieutenant Governor, former Senator Greg Bell. He's been a good friend, and I've known him on a personal basis in addition to public service, and he's just a great example, and given a great dedicated service to the state. So that was kind of a fun thing to do. We don't always get to do fun things, but for me it was really enjoyable to recognize him.
I couldn't believe you said all those good things about a lawyer.
Yeah, well, I might have to rethink it. I'd actually forgotten that he was a lawyer for a minute, I think, so. But anyway, yeah.
You know, after you said all those fine things, the one question I had is, why in the hell did he ever come here?
We wonder that, don't we, sometimes? Yeah. But a real great friend. And he'll do great things in his new assignment with U-Star. So.
Okay, questions?
Senator Bramble, your SB 54 came up in the governor's press conference this morning, oh, great, thank you. And he said that you two have spoken about the bill, and he has some concerns. One of the concerns that it might thwart the initiative process. And so, is that bill still in flux? And what do you say to that critique?
Well, I haven't heard the quote. Several of you asked about a veto. I haven't heard the governor's quote. I don't know that he used that language, but you know, if this were use a metaphor with a ball game, there are 7 times a bill is debated between the House and the Senate, the Rules Committee, Standing Committee, the votes on the floor. We're about the top of the second inning right now on this bill, and one of the questions was, I think, a tweet I saw about preempting a citizen's initiative. The facts are that Senate Bill 54 calls for a direct primary. That if the initiative passes in November, it will be up to the legislature next year to determine whether to amend or not, should the bill pass this year. But it calls for a direct primary. But it also provides a path if political parties would adopt far greater reforms than what Count My Vote had previously requested of them. So to say that it preempts anything is, number one, premature, and to talk about the governor's action, it takes 38 votes in the House, 15 in the Senate, and obviously the governor's signature. But we're at the front end of the process. The bill hasn't come up for a vote on the floor yet. It's had 2 votes. It's had a vote in the Rules Committee, and it's had a vote in a Standing Committee. It'll have 2 votes and 2 debates on the floor of the Senate. It'll then go to a House Committee, the Rules Committee, where it can be debated. It'll go to a House Standing Committee, then it'll go to the floor of the House. And that's our process. And once we're done with that, once the bill, should it survive all of that, whatever form it comes out after that, then we'll have ample time to have discussions with the governor about the next step.
If it's your end goal to have something akin to a direct primary, then why double up on these efforts that are already underway with the Citizens Initiative?
When this effort began, it was very clear that the intent of Count My Vote was to increase citizen participation. I'm vice president of the National Conference of State Legislatures. I've asked them for all the research that they have available on other states. Utah's unique in our nominating system, and so there's a lot of evidence about what does a direct primary do in the other states that have adopted it. And according to NCSL, it seems clear that there is no expectation that adopting a direct primary would increase citizen participation, but that was the stated objective of the electoral reforms that were being proposed. And so we've come forward with another proposal that clearly will increase citizen participation. Under Count My Vote, the press release that they gave said that every voter should be able to vote for any qualified candidate. Well, you can if it's an unaffiliated voter, an unaffiliated candidate. Any voter in the general election can vote for that unaffiliated candidate. But under Count My Vote, the single largest block of voters in the state of Utah, those that are unaffiliated with any political party, under Count My Vote, they would not have a vote in a primary. Under Senate Bill 54, they do.
The advice from the governor, he did say that he was open to the possibility of vetoing it if he felt like it did preempt it, but he cautioned, I guess, the legislature against doing something that would cut off the initiative process because he said it could engender a public backlash. Are you concerned at all
We're not
about
cutting
that?
off the initiative process. The initiative process goes forward.
Well, but it becomes meaningless.
The initiative process isn't meaningless. The citizens, if they pass, right now, we don't know whether they have the signatures, and we don't know whether it'll pass. We do know that the state of Utah, that the citizens have been very clear that we need to reform the election process. So it's a little bit premature. If it passes in November, then we'll have to deal with it. But that's premature at this point, Robert.
But it becomes meaningless if SB 54 passes. It doesn't matter one way or the other if the initiative passes.
I disagree. I think the voice of the citizens is important whenever that voice is
But it
heard.
doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything in the law if it passes or not. I mean, you could get every single person in the state voting for it, and it wouldn't matter if SB 54 is already in law.
Senate Bill 54 was put forward based on the representations of Count My Vote and what they were trying to accomplish. And what they were trying to accomplish was increase citizen participation, and Count My Vote does not accommodate the largest block of voters in the state. Those unaffiliated still would not be able to vote in a primary. And I think that's a serious problem.
So do you anticipate there would be a public backlash if SB 54 passes and nullifies Count My Vote?
I think it's too early to tell. Well, the public hasn't voted on it yet.
With the
Look. If you're asking, are we swayed by the polling data that Count My Vote is putting forward? Let me remind all of you that we had immigration, and the polling that you all reported on in 2010 and 2011 was that the citizens wanted a certain form of enforcement only, and the legislature pursued a different route. The Republican Party, both in Utah County and in other counties and at the state level, passed resolutions demanding that we repeal it. We passed the bill, and today the polling suggests that the citizens have embraced and are supporting the work of the legislature. On the other hand, we had vouchers. We passed a voucher bill. There's a lot of public dialogue. A referendum repealed vouchers, and the legislature has respected the voice of the citizens and hasn't brought it back. So I think it's too early to tell and to hypothesize about what will happen after November.
Well, if it's too early to tell, why not let it run its course, and then we can all tell. And then you can
Because
decide
then-
if it needs to be reformed next year.
There is consensus that we need to have reforms in the election process. There is no guarantee that Count My Vote would pass if it gets on the ballot. There's no guarantee today that they will have the signatures, but it is certain that we need election reforms. It's clear that we need to do things to increase citizen participation, and it is clear, even Count My Vote, in all the quotes they've said that Senate Bill 54 does very positive things, that it does move in the right direction, and if they fail, 54 acts as a backstop, but it does call for the direct primary that Count My Vote wants as the law of Utah.
To clarify, I just want to clarify your argument on unaffiliated voters not getting the rights under the Count My Vote process that they would under your bill. Are you talking about the parties blocking people from
Yes.
voting unless they're registered? So they could vote in a Democratic primary, but not a Republican?
The recent court cases, as recent as one in Idaho, the legislature can't direct parties to allow non-party members to vote in a primary. The courts have been clear on that point. Now in Utah, the Democrat Party, their primaries are open. They invite anyone to participate. If you're a registered voter, you're welcome to participate in the Democratic primary. The Republican Party, I believe it was 2003, closed the Republican primary to only registered Republican voters, which is about, 30, 35, 40% of the registered voters in the state. that means somewhere around 50, 60, 70% of the voters of the state of Utah, whatever that number is, and it fluctuates every cycle, but it's over 50% of the voters are precluded from voting in a primary under the count my vote scenario.
So the Republicans should be more like the Democrats.
Citizens should have a right to vote in a Republican primary if they're unaffiliated, but it comes up, it draws short of the premise that Democrats should select a Republican nominee. But unaffiliated, clearly the bill increases participation or the opportunity by, if a party chose to go down that road, if a party chose to adopt the reforms which are much greater than the party has already rejected and much greater than what Count My Vote had requested, if a party adopts those, then unaffiliated voters would be able to vote in primaries, which they otherwise couldn't do. If the party refuses to do that, then the direct primary is the nominating process.
We've had a member of the Democratic leadership team with us every day, I think, this year, and the one day you make that statement, Max, they're not here.
As a matter of fact, when Senator Robles was here, she was very supportive of Senate Bill 54 and what we're trying to do.
You know, if Senate Bill 54 does pass, then, and the Count My Vote initiative goes forward, this just becomes an endorsement of what we've done in the election process also. So I think it's good that we address it, and we should be addressing it, because this is obviously something that the people are concerned about, and then a confirmation vote by the people would just be just an endorsement of the things that we've already done.
On Medicaid, Speaker Lockhart seems to have, thank you.
I don't know about Medicaid.
Yeah. Seems to have drawn something of a line in the sand in terms of saying that they will not accept any federal money, and they put this state program forward. So where does the Senate leadership stand in relation to those things?
So we're going to be discussing this further in caucus. We have been educating our body on the different options. They're not educated on the House body, or on the House bill, or the House initiative on Medicaid. And so that's something we'll be discussing further, bringing that element into our understanding. I'm not sure all of us even know exactly what the House Medicaid proposal does. So that's something we're getting educated on.
Is your caucus ideologically opposed to accepting federal money?
I think it's mixed.
The governor said it's illogical for Utahns to pay more money and cover fewer people. Right now, you can take the federal money, cover all the people, or you could reject the federal money, pay additional state money, and cover fewer people.
Knowing that we are going to be sending out hundreds of millions of dollars in new taxes under the ACA and not get any of that back, it's a compelling argument. Getting a portion of that back, that's the money that's leaving Utah, that's compelling. And it's got a lot of, I think, legislators questioning whether we should do nothing. And so that's definitely a big part of this discussion.
But the other side is, if we take this step forward, which everyone who has any independent view of this, it's unsustainable. So we step forward and take this, what happens in 2 or 3 years if suddenly, like sequestration, the money's now cut off? And now we've got these people out in a program that they're relying on, and there's no way with state dollars we can step up and cover the federal. So that's the balance you have to take in the decision.
Senator Adams?
Yeah, so the facts are, I think, pretty much agreed upon, and the facts are that we're sending, as the president indicated, $600 to $700 million in medical device tax, insurance tax, Medicaid, reductions and reimbursements to hospitals, to the federal government. And the other fact is, no matter what we do, those over 100% of poverty get a tax credit. So if you're making over the amount of money that puts you in over 100% of poverty, you get a tax credit. And there's a donut hole that exists, or a coverage gap, and whether we choose to do anything with that is probably going to be part of the discussion. But the fact is that donut hole exists, and the speakers come up with one way to try to fill that donut hole. The task force came up with a couple of other ways. I'm not sure where our caucus will be, but I think the facts are that the donut hole does exist, and we probably need to look to see what to do about it, and that's probably something to look at right now.
The donut hole, affectionately being called that's the people that are under 100% federal poverty level.
You said you're going to have a caucus discussion today. Are you anticipating?
It'll be tomorrow.
Tomorrow. So 2 o'clock tomorrow, we can check back and have an answer. How long is it going to
Well, we can tell you what happened. We can tell you what.
if that's an answer.
Depends on the question, yes.
And Senator Adams, I think, articulates this well. Is there are a lot of these options and on the table, and we're trying to sort through those and decide what is going to be the best approach for Utah.
The governor uses the word moral, that there is a moral imperative to cover these people who have been left in the lurch after the Supreme Court decision. Do you see that as, do you agree with him? Is there a moral imperative there?
I think we need to do everything we can do to see that that people who that don't have the ability to afford health care, that they have access to health care.
Sure.
I mean, that's been the, I think, right, that's been the kind of the policy for many years, right? Even when we didn't have Medicaid, there were county hospitals, government hospitals where everybody who had a need could come and get health care. And I don't think that any American out there wants to see people that need health care that are not able to get that. And I think that that's an important element in this discussion, and probably the most important element could be human aspects of it.
Okay.
If you were going to answer,
No, I wasn't going to answer.
Oh, okay.
So I was just going to agree with the president in trying to cover. I mean, we're covering many of those people now, but we're covering in an emergency room. And I'm just not sure that that's the most, there's an economic side to the moral side, and what's the best economical way to try to give them health care. And that's part of the equation, and part of the, it's got to be part of the Utah solution is to how to handle it economically too.
I'd just say that I was the co-chair of Health Systems Reform Task Force for several years, and we discovered ways to be able to expand our coverage of the population, even from 138% and below. Before Obamacare, we were discussing ways that we could reach out and cover this population. And
Primary care.
our challenge to the federal government was block grant us the Medicaid funds. Let us innovate and take that same block of funds, and we found some ways that we could potentially cover this expansion population with the money they're sending to us now through different options that are not available to us because of the restrictions that come with the Medicaid dollars. Let the states do some innovation. We think that there's some possibilities there. There are no guarantees, obviously, but there are some things that we could do as a state, and we could discover if we had some more flexibility.
Is that similar, what you're asking for, is that similar to the waivers that other states like Indiana, Arkansas, those places have gotten? And so do you see that as a possibility?
Well, there's some other waivers that maybe some states have gotten, but also we tried to get some waivers with some reform that Senator Littleton was working on, and we were denied those waivers, trying to bend the cost curve down for the future. And that's got to be an important element in all this discussion on a national level, because where we're headed with all the government programs is unsustainable. We're deficit spending to the point where we've now reached $17 trillion in debt. And if we don't have more discussions about how we can take the same block of dollars and innovate with those so that we can cover those populations with those existing dollars, if we're not having those discussions, it's unsustainable. And I think that's part of the reason why there's some arguments that you don't expand, because every dollar we get in the expansion Medicaid is borrowed. Every new dollar that Congress authorizes an appropriation today, and has been for the last couple of years, every new dollar is borrowed. Either they're going to our population or other countries, or they're going to the Federal Reserve to pay for that. And that isn't going to work for very much longer. And that's the concern. What happens when the government can't pay for this anymore? What's going to happen now to those programs? Are they sustainable? That's the big question in a lot of people's minds. So, I mean, we have to be pragmatic about this. We need to be realistic about what we're facing here. And we continue to challenge Washington. Block grant us the money. Let us innovate with those dollars and see if we can't expand and cover that population with the same amount of dollars you're sending us now.
I'd like to add another aspect to it. My job is to balance the budget, and I found one problem is you only spend money once. We have limited amount of dollars, and every time people talk about a new change in Medicaid, I think, what's it going to cost us this year? What's it going to cost us 3 or 4 years from now, as we put together budgets that I know will be tight. I look at public education, I look at our programs we have in Health and Human Services. All those desperately need the money, and if we get in a program that takes us away for something else, we have to decide what is the greater priority. And I think that's my challenge. The next 3.5 weeks is to recommend a budget that'll pass, that will sustain and help us get through and invest in ways that'll help. And so every time everybody talks about a new Medicaid program, my first question is, what's it going to cost and where are we going to get the money from?
Would you be making Medicaid more sustainable for the rest of the country if you forfeited $700 million? I mean, in theory, would the federal government want your money without having to pay for it?
They'll cut the taxes. That's what the federal government will do.
Yeah. I'm taking that quote in all seriousness and run with it. Sorry, that was a dumb joke. You mentioned money will have to come from somewhere. Speaker Lockhart's technology initiative. The governor seems to think that he has allies in the Senate who are willing to pare that down and do something smaller, but still technology supportive, rather than the $250 to $300 million program that she's proposing.
I know Senator Adams is working on this, and we'll get some comments from him, but we are concerned where the money is coming from. There's been talk about that money coming out of transportation, and we're already in a hole with transportation. We're not even able to maintain many of the state roads now. Our local roads are needing some revenue because the gas tax is not kept up with inflation. And so by taking transportation dollars to fund this is only digging us deeper into the hole. We have to face just the reality that that isn't really a possibility. We're going to have to be looking at ways to, and in this discussion with Medicaid also, we have so much pressure on our general fund right now that it just pushes out into the education fund and makes less money available for our public education system, our higher education system. And it really highlights some of the balancing act that Senator Hilliard has so articulated, that, yeah, if we spend more money here, we're going to be taking it from somewhere else. And so that's our job. It's a tough job, but we're willing to step up to the plate and make the hard decisions. Senator Adams?
Yeah, the president's right on. I mean, we have 60% of the roads in the state of Utah. When you look at trying to find a funding source, we've heard transportation may be one, but that are not maintained. By not maintaining them, if you do preventative maintenance, you extend their life, and it's the cheapest way to be able to cover your expenses for roads. But when you have that type of funding problem and trying to maintain your current transportation system, that's a real challenge. Most of those roads are in the rural areas, not very highly traveled, unless, yes, you happen to be the one on them. And you fill potholes in them, but after a while those roads will deteriorate. And so if you take a funding source away, there needs to be at least some type of fee, and we've moved away from direct users fees for transportation, and that's probably an issue as to how to replace those monies and when to do those. But that unfunded liability is a significant thing, I think, that kind of weighs on a lot of our minds. And Utah isn't the best managed state because we ignore those type of things. Many agencies or many government groups would actually ignore those unfunded liabilities and just hopefully sweep them under the carpet. But I can't do that, and I don't think that many in the legislature want to do that. So that's got to be one of the issues I think we look at as we try to find funding sources.
And we feel very strongly about funding growth and the WPU, so that limits now what money we can spend on a new initiative, however laudable it is, and we're working with the House right now on the program itself, trying to see what we could do, and it's important to us that we do whatever we pass, we do it on taking a scalable approach, so that we can be flexible, at least with what money we begin with. And Senator Jones, I know, is here with the representing the Democratic Party. I know they've had some talk or had some discussions about this. Do you want to make any comments, Senator Jones?
Well, I would just echo what you just said. If you don't have new revenues, it has to come from existing revenues somewhere, and so you can't. You can't keep starving the beast. I think many of us were surprised, but it seemed to come as a surprise for many of us. We've had a task force. I've been sitting on it for the last year, an education task force. That is probably going to be continued, and it seemed like a rightful place to at least discuss this issue, in my opinion, to see the merits of it, how it would be funded. I think I can't find anyone who has an answer as to why. So, why it would be proposed right now, that wants to state it.
Some of the other questions that are being asked that we don't have complete answers for yet do we have technologically, do we have what's needed out there to be able to provide bandwidth and everything that would be needed in all parts of the state? And we're not able to answer that question yet. whether or not we need to train our teachers to get to a certain level on whatever program goes forward and what that's going to cost and how long it's going to take. I still think those questions need to be addressed and will be part of the discussion as well. Taking the money from transportation, if you ride out of the Wasatch Front and get out of the Wasatch Front very far, you will see roads that are starting to deteriorate. And once they get to a certain point, you can't just bring them back with a little bit of a chip seal. They get to the point where they deteriorate and start losing the shoulders and start getting alligator cracking, and then you have to do complete rebuild of those roads, and that's extremely costly. So a lot of things come to play in this whole discussion and how we fund everything.
Senator Okerlund, you're from a part of the state where, well, I mean, you just mentioned with roads, but I was thinking about the bandwidth. Do the communities that you represent have that kind of internet access available, high speed?
Not some of them. Some of them do not. Hanksville, for example, still doesn't have it. I know there are other more remote areas that would need to have some upgrades, I think. So what's the cost of that? How long is it going to take? Those are some questions we need to answer.
I think we're going to wind this down. I think just concluding this, that was another issue, but back on that education issue, technology is going to play a big part in the education of our children going forward. But still, the most important part of a child's education is a qualified teacher. And we need to focus on giving our teachers the best opportunities to develop their skills, because that's what moves the dial more than anything in a student's outcome. And technology, it can be a very cooperative and a very productive part in the hands of a teacher who that knows how to use that and has the tools to use that technology as an enhancement in that student's education. And that's a direction that we need to be taking. So thank you, everyone, for being here.
That was perfect.
Thank you. You guys